All right, ladies, welcome back to another episode of the Strong Mamas podcast, where we're going to chat about, well, actually, we normally chat about metabolism, mindset, and macros, but today we're going to go down a different avenue, which I think is going to be incredibly valuable and definitely interesting for you. I have a special guest with me today. And rather than just butcher an introduction, Wanda, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself, let people know who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is Wanda Belisle. I'm a registered health coach and autoimmune paleo certified coach, and I'm the creator of the Ignite Wellness Journal. I work with clients who have myelocephalic myelitis or chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID, because that is something actually I just spent like the worst 5 years of my life battling it, and I finally have gotten over that hump. So now I'm helping my clients deal with that.
So we battled for 5 years, but then the COVID thing is new, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit how you kind of pivoted to deal with long COVID, because that's something that, I mean, I know plenty of my clients are dealing with, and so many are having to deal with now, and something that at least I don't know a whole lot about.
Okay, well, it starts with the history of chronic fatigue syndrome, or also known as myelocephalic myelitis or ME/CFS. The first really recorded history of it was in Akureyri, Iceland, with an outbreak of a virus. And then suddenly there's like 200 people who are falling ill after this virus with the fatigue and the brain fog and all these different comorbidities, which is so similar with long COVID. Lots of times, chronic fatigue syndrome is triggered by a virus. And then there's also a few of like an injury or sometimes a trauma can also trigger, but it is commonly triggered by a virus.
Is there any like particular virus that they have discovered that sets it off, or is it just a viral reaction in the body?
It's a viral reaction in the body. Lots of times people have Epstein-Barr, or some people with Lyme disease kind of roll over into ME/CFS, but it's usually a viral trigger. For myself, I actually, when I was 15, I got sick like with everything. It was crazy. I'd have like a rare gum infection that got me taken out of high school and put in quarantine. I broke out with all kinds of canker sores inside my mouth. I started having really bad joint pain. And all the doctors could go and say was I had Raynaud's also. They diagnosed me with Raynaud's and then said I was just like overstressed, overworking, doing too much at 15 years old.
Right.
So I just kind of had this like progressively over my lifetime, I would go and get these bouts of getting really sick and really tired and then resting and getting better. And it kept going until then I had just after I turned 39, I had a really bad spine injury and blew out the disc in my back. And from there, like I was laying flat out on the floor for 9 months. I could barely walk. I was like dragging a foot along, and I'm like heavily sedated on painkillers and muscle relaxants. I did like every therapy known to man to try to fix it myself. I'm like, I have a nutrition background. I'm going to fix this with nutrition, and thousands of dollars on physiotherapy and flights to see sports medicine specialists. And it got progressively worse to the point that I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair. It was affecting my bladder. I no longer have feeling in my feet. I have permanent nerve damage from it. And then I finally got emergency surgery 9 months later. Wow. And I woke up and it was amazing. Like I could walk again. And it was like a miracle happened. But then as I weaned off the painkillers, I know something was like terribly, terribly wrong. My brain just wouldn't work.
Right.
Terrible fatigue. My autonomic nervous system had gone crazy. Like I could not manage heat or cold. I was constantly freezing or too hot. I was breaking out with rashes from the sun, terrible gut issues. It just kind of all went downhill from there.
And so Yeah. So that's traumatizing. You finally had a fix to one thing and it seems like it set off all these other things. I think you called out something really important that definitely those of us with health coaching and nutrition backgrounds definitely fly into to fix it mode with ourselves, right? Like, because we have all the education and knowledge. So we definitely should be able to fix it. But I think more importantly, I don't know if it's true for your clients, but a lot of the women that I work with very much have this pride around that they too should be able to fix it, to either power through or to be able to navigate this in some way. So tell us a little bit how you moved past the fixer mode and started to seek support in order to be able to help and heal yourself.
Well, like 98% of my clients, I was like type A doer. Yeah. So I was going to fix it myself. I knew better than the doctors going in. And it really took like totally hitting rock bottom where I had to completely surrender to the disease. I went in fix it mode. I was trying to take everything I learned from my back injury and write a book while laying on the couch.
Right.
I didn't realize at the time that I had POTS. I just
Okay.
knew I felt terrible. And my daughter and my husband were going to a snowboard race. And I was crying because I was so fatigued. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I didn't want to miss out. And to get to the track, you have to go up a T-bar and then just snowboard down a little bit. I'm like, I can do it. And I like side slipped down. I watched their first race and then they decided to get lunch. I stood up and I was like super dizzy. And I'd been dealing with these like really dizzy spells. And instead of sitting down like a normal person, I decided I would go as fast as I could to make it to the
Oh
chalet.
no.
Then I could go and just relax.
Yeah.
And I was feeling terrible. I came around a corner and I stood up. And as soon as I like stood up from a tuck, everything just went black. And I
Yeah.
went like head over heels down the mountain. And I just felt this like white hot shock of pain. I knew something was wrong. And I got up and I was like, okay, took off my snowboard. I'm like, I can't move my arm. I'm like, it's dislocated.
Is this after
But
back surgery?
yeah, yes.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, after the back surgery, I thought it was really fast because I spent like 2 years being very slow because of my back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, so I packed down my snowboard and I went to see them. I'm like, I think I dislocated my shoulder. I went down and sat in like the hut, and I'm like, no, I'm fine. You guys go finish your race. And so they called the ambulance because I don't want them to like miss
Miss
out.
the race. Yeah.
And I'd broken my shoulder in 4 places.
Oh wow.
And at the time, they thought I probably need a shoulder replacement.
Hmm.
But then my doctor's like, we'll just leave because it was like a really good, if you're going to crush your shoulder, it was in a good
A good
position.
crush.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a positive.
Yeah. So that was like the beginning of the end. From there, I went in, I was like in a brace for 3 months and I was still trying to work and still trying to do something. So then I ended up getting like a ganglion and needing surgery and tendonitis in this hand. So I literally couldn't do
Anything.
anything at all. And I just had to completely surrender um and seek help outside myself. And that's where I got like an amazing internal specialist doctor because I knew like all I'm doing is making this like progressively
Right.
worse.
But isn't that typically like I have Hashimoto's and I've told my story on this podcast a million times, but my breaking point was because fatigue is a big thing. I mean, it's autoimmune, so of course, fatigue and all those things. And my breaking point was that I was constantly trying to do things in order to make myself feel better, and horses and being with my horses and all those things and being outside is one of those things that have always kind of energized me and made me feel good. And I tell my clients, and I've told listeners here multiple times that at my breaking point, I was driving to the barn and I pulled over because I was too tired to continue getting out there. And I called my husband and I was like, this is what it feels like to be actively dying. Like I have no other explanation for this. Like my body is shutting down. And the interesting thing, because it sounds like your story is very similar, is that we feel like we still need to be doing things in order to make this better. And I don't know about you, but I'm as hard-headed and stubborn as it gets. So it's like, in my mind, it's like, oh, they tell me, and this is actually before I had a full-on Hashimoto's diagnosis. I suspected it. Like, exercise, that gives you energy, and, being outside in the sun, and, get up when the alarm goes off. All these things are going to fix it. And it just made it so, so, so much worse. So is that something that you commonly see with your clients when they're
Yeah,
coming in?
yeah, it's one of the biggest things I see is they're still in this cycle of push and crash.
Right.
Like they're constantly, as soon as you have a little bit of energy, you want to like do a load of laundry or go to like watch your kid play a game, and you push through and then you spend 5 days on the couch unable to move.
And that's the hardest thing, for me as a mom and for so many of my clients. I know it was really heartbreaking for me. My kids would want to stay up and watch a movie or have game night and do all these things. And I was like, I want to go to bed at 7 o'clock. I'm tired. So walk us through a scenario in where you are, coaching your clients to move from this place of push and then crash into a place of finding balance, because I know I can't imagine coaching myself through that. It was hard. So actually coaching others that are dealing with the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I teach a method called practical pacing. And really, if you're going to expand your energy envelope, so just have more energy, you have to get out of that cycle. And it's
Mhm.
really getting touching base to their why. Like, why is it important that you don't push through? Like, if you actually do want to go to your kid's game on the weekend, you have to go and pace during your week. And so then it looks like telling them to bookend their rest. So you'd rest, like even if you're, let's say you're doing the dishwasher, rest, do the dishwasher, rest after. Any kind of activity you have to do, you really do have to pace and be really aware of any kind of symptoms coming up. And if you know you see like a sore throat or an increase in fatigue, a change in your mood, that you really have to stop everything you're doing right then and rest. I was at the point where like I'd go to the grocery store and think that I could push a shopping cart. I'd have to abandon my cart and just sit in my car. I've I've sat down in the store because I literally didn't have any more energy to go
Yeah.
any further.
Yeah. So this begs the question, in a society where we are conditioned and constantly pushed to do more, or at least, okay, I'm gonna speak for Americans here. To constantly be doing more. And if you are resting, there is this undertone of you're lazy or you're not productive or all these different things. And so then there becomes the issues of the mindset work or the mind work, and kind of battling these stories, and battling this balance between like, no, rest is the answer for me versus I need to have like some discipline or whatever to get up and do things.
Yeah, no, that's huge. Like, and even in Canada, it's the same. I had a really successful business, and then I got 2 part-time jobs because I didn't have to work every month of the year. So it's the same here, and it's a huge. That's the first step with my clients is working on mindset
Right.
and knowing that the best thing you can do for yourself is rest. But you really have to reprogram like everything you've been taught since you're a child about how important it is to like be productive, to work, to contribute. And
Right.
it's really completely rewiring all that to be able to help.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because I know for myself, and like the conversation on self-worth was a big thing. We're wired to believe that, our self-worth is attached to how we are contributing, but we never ever are taught that our contribution literally can be from resting and caring for ourselves. It's so incredibly interesting.
Yes. Yeah, it's
Um, So I don't know if this is true in Canada, but over in the United States, there is this debate which ties right along into this context of needing to do and needing to produce and be productive, et cetera, et cetera. There's this debate as to whether or not chronic fatigue is real or these things that people have made up in their heads. So I would love for you to speak into that.
oh my goodness. This is going to be really hard to admit, but when my internal medicine doctor first brought up chronic fatigue, I told him that is a made up disease for whiners. and like karma. And he was great. He was really, really gentle the way he went in, like did all the blood tests and did everything, and then it showed me the actual like I needed to see the science behind it, and it is a real disease. It's considered by the World Health Organization as a neuroimmune disease because of COVID and some of the other research. There's a gentleman named Whitney Defoe. He was 30 years old when he was struck down with ME/CFS, and his father was part of the Human Genome Project, and he left the project, and he just like put every bit of energy and got all his friends involved in finding markers so we could find biological markers to show that it is a real illness. And he's made great strides. And then unfortunately with COVID, there's so much more research going now, so now they can see if they do certain brain scans and stuff, they can find neuroinflammation, and they can find that people who have post-exertional malaise is one of the hallmarks. So that's like if you go and do any kind of exertion, it could be physical, mental, emotional, any kind of exertion will trigger this sickness response, which is the same response you get with the flu, like you feel like cold or hot. Yeah, just you feel malaise, you feel terrible. And that is, they've found biological markers to show that post-exertional malaise is caused by this sickness response in your brain, and it is a real thing.
That is absolutely fascinating. And I wasn't going to say anything because I definitely have been before I had to deal with this, because I didn't have to deal with any of my autoimmune stuff until I got to my 30s. So, in my 20s, especially, gosh, as a personal trainer, as a health coach, and all the things, if clients would be like, I have chronic fatigue, I'm like, oh, so you're lazy. And I'm like, yeah, I totally feel you on like the karma thing. And I too, before I realized that I had something like Hashimoto's, I was like, there's got to be like something that I'm just not doing right or not doing enough in order to fix. And that's like not always true. So I would love for you, because it sounds like, your doctor, I don't feel like, at least in my clientele and my experience with medical professionals, it seems like your doctor was up to date on research and was very real about what was going on with you. And I don't feel like that's the same story for a lot of people that are dealing with some similar things. So I would love for you to share, some of the ways that folks can maybe start to discover, what's going on, especially those with long COVID, right? Because that's going rampant right now. Obviously, now that we're in the post-pandemic world, but how folks can start to figure out like what is going on with them, and essentially advocate for themselves with their care provider.
Yeah, now I did find a good doctor, but it wasn't easy. I've seen dozens of specialists, and I had so many people tell me it was just in my head, and just left really devastated and questioning myself. My best advice is to document everything. That's literally why I made my journal, is because I needed proof to show my doctor there was something wrong, because I was told, oh, you're just depressed. And I had to actually get in an argument with my doctor. I'm like, no, I'm not depressed. I got very angry. I'm like, I know what depression feels like. This isn't depressed. Everything in my life is so good, but I'm so sick. Like everything else is great, but I'm so sick, and this isn't in my head. And it was her referring to me to this one doctor who, it was just a fluke that he happened to specialize in ME/CFS. So my advice would be definitely document. You want to document your symptoms. You want to document what medications and what you're doing to mitigate those symptoms. Because if you go in, you might not realize that, like if you have POTS, you do things like have salt in your water, right. You wear the compression socks. So if you're doing all these things, but you're saying like, oh, and the doctor asks if you stand up and get dizzy, and you're like, no, but you're like doing 5 different things to be able to stand up and not get dizzy. You have to make sure they really understand that. I documented my nutrition, because they told me when I did break my shoulder, it was because I was dehydrated. And I literally took out my journal. I was like, no, look, I drank 2 liters of water.
Yeah, no, that's not it.
You really do need to have proof. And it is hard because brain fog is one of the biggest, it's a marker that you have, but it's also one of the hardest things to deal with.
Right.
So have one dedicated journal, write down all the symptoms as they happen, write the dates down because you won't remember. I can't.
Yeah.
So many appointments and they're like, oh, I was like, no, I feel really good, but I forgot, like, no, I could barely get up the stairs yesterday.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Yeah.
it's all about recording, documenting, so you have that proof that something is wrong. And also you want to record, like if you have like a pain scale or fatigue scale, it might be like a 5 out of 10, but you want to say also how that is affecting your life. Like a
Right.
5 out of 10 might mean that I only have the energy to like get up, go to the bathroom, maybe make some food, but I only leave the house once a week
Right.
to get groceries if I absolutely have to.
Right. And I think one thing that I try to push on my clients, again, kind of looking at the way we've been conditioned as a whole, that when we're quote logging things, that we're doing it from a place of pointing out like our flaws, or where we, from food journaling, it's like, this is where I should be restricting or pulling back, or this is where I should be doing more, or this is where, things are wrong. But, for me, I too keep a journal of everything. It's really a good way for you to be a detective for your own health, and figure out what's going on. And I know, like with the little guy who was asleep and now is awake, I know for like so many of my clients, like they're like, that's just one more thing to do. But from my perspective, it's actually one of the most important things that you can do to take back control of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crucial. Like the journal I made is really difficult for people who have really bad brain fog, really no energy. So there is an option to go and just get like, take your calendar,
Mm-hmm.
and green is it for days that you feel like I'm feeling normal. And then yellow is for symptom days, red is for days that you're feeling terrible, and black is for days that you crash. And you can just dot on your calendar. It's kind of like a traffic light theory. And
I
then just
love that.
what symptoms you're having.
Yeah, I love that. And that's like such a low barrier to entry. Like, let's just start here, because I think part of it too just starts with like the habit of actually logging. But I know for myself, and I've crashed on journaling like so many times that I'll start out, and there was the whole, I don't know if it's still a thing because I've definitely moved away from it, the bullet journal where you needed to have all the colored pens and the stencils and the everything. I'm like, this is going to be beautiful. And I'm like, no, some days it looks like a serial killer dropped into my notebook and started like scratching things up. But that's also a good indication of like, what's going on. If you have the energy and you're in a place of like, let's make this beautiful and colorful, then that's a good indicator of how things are going as well. I do want to step back too, because this is directly paralleling my experience. So when I went into my deep dark, like I'm too tired, like I wake up and I want to go back to bed tired. It was in 2020. My 17-year-old dog just passed away. We were in a pandemic. My kids were virtual schooling. And so I was, like I was struggling so hard. So I started reaching out to doctors, and, this is telemedicine was the thing. And exactly like you're depressed. You're anxious, you're depressed. And to the point, and I had a therapist at the time as well, to the point where I was like, oh, if so many people are telling me that I'm depressed, that must be what's going on. So I wound up taking antidepressants, which of course made me tireder. So I would love for you to share a little bit more, kind of like how you knew that depression wasn't it, because I do feel like, oh, I'm going to say something controversial, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. In a world that we're so quick to diagnose and prescribe without really digging down to like, are we diagnosing and prescribing correctly? I love to be able to empower listeners and my clients to be able to make sure that we're getting the correct diagnosis before we jump to prescribe.
For myself personally, when I had terrible periods as a kid, like I'd miss school, the pain was insane. I always had like this, felt like someone was driving a knife through my right side. And so I went to the doctor, and I was told I was depressed. I didn't even know what that meant. And this is like pre-internet. I had to go to the bookstore and get a book on depression. That's how old I am. And I was like, I wasn't sure. But then as I went for 4 years with endometriosis, not being treated and being in insufferable pain, which led to like self-medicating, and it was just, I became severely depressed. So I had that background of knowing what and severe depression feels like. And then I had postpartum depression, which I was medicated for. So I know what it, like when I went in, I was like, I know what it feels just to have like that hopeless depression feeling, and that what I was feeling was something completely different.
Agree with the hopeless, the hopelessness aspect of depression. Which was, like, it was really challenging for me in 2020. I was like, yeah, I'm really sad my dog died. And I'm like, our lives have been turned upside down. Yeah, I'm sad over this. But I too like very much resonate with the fact, like, but I don't feel like hopeless. I want help. I have hope. So that was like the big driver for me for being like, this isn't it. What do you feel like from you and your lived experience was like the big dividing factor that you were like, this is not hopelessness for me?
For me, it was like my body and my brain just stopped working. Like I went in, I was trying to do physio to go and get my drop foot to work again and stuff. And it was my first time I hit 5K walk, or like hit a 5K marker. And on that walk, my heart rate went from, I think it was maybe 115 to 170 for no reason. I was like, that's not normal. And at night, I'd also get that same, like my heart rate would just like bounce up for no reason. It got to the point, it was so bad that when my family wasn't home, I'd sleep with the door unlocked in case I had to call 911. And then like so many things were so bad, and then like my brain just wouldn't work. I was trying to write my journal and I couldn't sequence like 1 to 20. I couldn't write 1 to 20 on the page. I'd get lost. I'd have to write out each number. I have an app called Grammarly that like tracks your writing, and my how correct it was in the 2% of all Grammarly people, because my brain just wasn't functioning. I typed something out and it wasn't even words. Like so I was scared. I was like, my brain, there's something like majorly wrong with my brain. And that's how I built my other businesses, was with my brain. And I'm like,
right.
It was terrifying. I thought I was like losing my mind or dying. At this point, something had to be severely wrong.
Yeah, I told, and I wasn't joking. People thought I was joking all the time. I was like, I think I might have a brain tumor. And they were like, you're overreacting. I'm like, am I? I don't think so. Yeah. And I do think, and I think that it prevents a lot of people from getting help, but there's so many people that experience the same type of thing, and they're made to feel crazy. We'll have another special guest. They're made to feel crazy, or like they're not telling the truth, or they're trying to get out of something because they're sharing that their actual lived experience, which is just beyond me. We're never going to get past this if we can't, trust people telling you what they're feeling and what they're experiencing. I would love for you to share. So were you a health coach before all of this?
I was actually, yeah. I got certified in 2013. And I actually ran a medical weight center and had a couple other coaches. I specialized with diabetes and autoimmune diseases and heart disease. So those are, because it was out of a medical center. Yeah, so I was like, nutrition can fix everything, because I've seen people get off their insulin. I've seen people like their blood work just completely transformed by fixing their diet. And then I was like, well, I can fix this. I've helped so many people, and then I couldn't help myself.
Yeah. So for me, again, like so many parallels, me not being able to fix myself, and obviously I'm still here, so it didn't happen. But I'm just curious if you ever had these thoughts as well. For me, when I couldn't fix myself, I was ready to quit on nutrition. I was like, my whole life, I believed that this could solve everything, and I can't fix myself.
Yeah. No, I was absolutely like that, because I was like, yeah, completely. It was like nutrition was my religion. And it changed like I was devastated. I was like, for 5 years, I couldn't work. Like working wasn't an option. I was too sick. Um, but it changed how I saw myself and who I was in the world.
Yeah, yeah, and it definitely, it sounds like it did the same for you, but it definitely lit a different fire under me for, how I could show up and help people, beyond weight loss, right? And in all these things that we traditionally think, nutrition is going to help me do this. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more, about your practice. And so we've kind of talked about how you coach clients, but how you started to shift your health coaching into this way, and what you do, and where people can find you and learn more about you and potentially work with you.
Well, it started like I was just advocating for chronic fatigue syndrome so people would know that it's like a real illness. And then long COVID came along, and I just knew I had to help. Like I had this need or desire to help people, and I wanted to take what I learned to get my health back and help other people. So I started just doing one-on-one coaching, and now I've evolved it so we have a small group coaching that's a little more affordable, and then I have a free monthly Zoom call where we just get together. It's like in our living room and just kind of chat and just talk about how ME/CFS and long COVID affects our lives. And I help coach people if they need a little advice. Yeah, and I can be found on Instagram.
Yes, and she has the most amazing reels. I'm so jealous because my reels don't come out that well. We will definitely put links to all of this in the show notes. But before we wrap up, and I almost lost my question, but I just found it again. I would love for you to share briefly, because I know this is a struggle for other people, whether they're an entrepreneur or they're just a mom. How do you manage, because you have two kids too, and we discussed before we hit record, she said hers is a little bit easier because they're teenagers, and I said it's not easier, it's different. How do you manage chronic fatigue, long COVID, and all of these things while running a business, while helping and supporting others, and having a family too?
I really have to walk the talk. I still rest during the day. After lunch, I do yoga nidra just about every single day. If I feel like I don't want to, then I do double the time.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. Don't want to do it double.
Yeah. Yeah. So I walk the talk. And if I am getting too tired, I have to be honest with my clients and say, like, I just need, like this week, our modules didn't all get out because I also do a fitness part with my coaching.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, I just wasn't able to film it, but it's hard and it takes a lot. But my children have grown up to become the most compassionate and empathetic kids. So they know, and they help out. We have systems to go in where everyone's kind of a little more responsible. They do all their own laundry. They've done it since they were like probably 7 and 8.
It's amazing.
But we had to do it out of necessity because I was
Right.
just too sick. And like they do all the grocery shopping, and yeah, they have.
But I think that the underlying thing is the ability to speak your truth, and to know where you need support, and to actually ask for what you need. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are afraid to ask for that. So if you had to leave listeners with like one big thing, like that you were going to put on a billboard, let's imagine, what would that be?
It would be ME/CFS and long COVID isn't in your head, and there's support and there's hope. Because there's so many people say there's like only 5% of people recover, but
Yeah.
you don't have to fully recover to expand your life to be able to have a way more enjoyable and fulfilling life.
All right. I love that. I love that. You don't have to fully recover to love your life. Wanda, this has been amazing. I know this is going to reach so many people that are going to hear this and feel seen, and know that there is hope, which was exactly why I wanted to have you on the show. We are going to link your website, your Instagram, where people can learn about working with you, all in the show notes. So if you're driving or walking, don't worry about it. We've got you. Yeah, thank you so much for being with us and for your willingness to share your journey and your experience.
Thanks for having me.